Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for joining in for IHRP HR Tech Talk series, webinar number 3. It's a great pleasure to have all of you here to witness how Benny, Gerald, Nicole, Prithvi, and Chee, Tung have been using various technologies and tools to effectively engage with employees. Thank you for joining in. The next slide. Before we get the context setting, quick housekeeping rules. This webinar is definitely getting recorded, and at the end of the session, we're going to have a QR code flashed out. And if you scan the QR code, then we're going to send you a docket that consists of the video recording, a combined FAQ answered of all the questions that comes through the presentation, and the slides that the presenters have used. So you're going to go to get all of it, provided you are able to scan the QR code at the end of the presentation. Yeah, you have the option to post your questions in the Q&A box. And if you would like to direct it specifically to a presenter, do mention the name of the panelist and then follow it up with a question. That will really help them address it. We are not going to wait till the end of the session to answer all your questions. That's the best part. So the moment the presenter finishes his presentation, he's going to go online and start answering your questions. And only those questions which we are not able to answer it on chat, we're going to take it up in the Q&A session. So post your questions in Q&A, and if you have any queries, post it in chat. Do not mix up both of it. Thank you very much. And then the materials that are going to be presented to you have a lot of copyrights. So please resist from screen recording or screen capturing any of these slides. If you would like to have a copy of these slides, you could mail in to the IHRP team at community@ihrp.sg, seek the permission, and we could share it with you. The next slide. The background for the Tech Talk series, this is number 3. So we've already had a great response to the first 2 webinars. This is actually being organized in the run-up to the Tech Research Study Report that is being launched by Ministry of Manpower and IHRP in September 2020. And we've also launched a HR Tech Skills Badge, and we want to ensure that we give enough visibility to the skills badges for the IHRP members. So this is being organized in an effort to promote these 2 aspects and also evangelize the adoption of a digital HR mindset amongst the HR community. And if you're wondering why I'm here, while I'm also the founder and CEO of HRTech.sg, I have the opportunity of being the program lead for IHRP's HR Tech Task Force. Our main focus at the task force is to drive the adoption of a digital HR mindset amongst the HR community. So this is a 4-part series. The final part will be on 25th September, where we are going to focus on how we can leverage HR Tech for talent development. So from this webinar, we really hope that you have a glimpse of at least 8 different technologies and tools that these speakers are using and have found it useful. And we also are hopeful that you will have insights to some of the best trends and practices that's happening in the marketplace. Next slide. As mentioned, the first one was focused on RPA on 14th August. The second one focused on talent acquisition technologies, recruitment tech on 28th August. Today we are focusing on talent engagement on 25th on talent development. So don't forget to log in again on 25th September and see some of the best tools to develop your talent. Next slide. And I'm extremely thrilled to inform you all that the moderator for today's session is a fellow IHRP HR Tech Task Force member, Benny Leo, and IHRP-SP, and he's also the Executive Director at iWise Group. A fantastic human resource professional with more than 15 years of HR experience He's got experience in running startups, supporting the HR teams in multinationals at various growth stages. He's a strong believer in HR tech. He's been partnering with various businesses in their HR transformation journey in the areas of digital HR, data analysis, design thinking, and culture development. And I'm really thrilled that Benny is going to be the moderator for the session today. Next slide. I just want to leave you all with one thought. Enterprises that focus on HR technology as part of the transformational agenda are creating sustainable economic value and better workplace experience. And especially at this point of time, that's going to be a real cutting edge factor for all our organizations. So I hope you have a great session today. Over to you, Benny.
Right. Hi everybody. Thanks, Zirim, for that very thrilling and exciting introduction. I have been told that we have about 510 participants or more, so I'm more than thrilled. I'm actually nervous at this point of time. Pretty cold here, but yes, just like you, I'm also here to learn from the panel of speakers. Later on, you'll get to see. Now, just a little bit of background on today's webinar and why we're doing it. I mean, everybody knows that COVID-19 has actually changed the way businesses are being run. So same thing for HR. We also have a new way of looking at things. Now, if you look at it, there's a HR Tech map that is being shown here, if you can see it, but I'm sure later on you can see that. You'll realize that HR Tech is actually, you can actually link it to every stages of your employee life cycle. This is something that HR we like to talk about, life cycle and employee life cycle. So this is no longer like tech is no longer an alternative tools that we're talking about. It becomes an essential tools now. So today, I would say that we are going to look at how this tech, digital and tech HR is going to help us at every stages of the employee life cycle, and how we as HR are going to do it. Now, the key factors that's going to aid this growth shift, like, one, we are looking at a new norm. Just like yourself, all of us here, I'm sure we are working from home now. So there is this remote working that we have to talk about. So all the more, the question now is that how do you reach them? So again, we are going to hear that from our panel of speaker. And all of us, I'm sure we are under pressure to how do we deliver with the shortest time, the fastest time, and reaches out to the biggest audience. So that's what we're going to talk about. And then today, like yourself, I think I'm going to learn a little bit more about what are the tools that are going to help us. And finally, the productivity. Everybody is talking about productivity. So again, how is HR Tech going to help us? All right, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, so the synopsis for today is that we are going to see a strong link between customer experience and employee experience. In fact, a lot of things that we do in HR are closely linked to customer service. We always talk about internal customer, internal client. So the whole idea is that this pandemic has actually pushed all of us to rethink that customer, how are we going to deliver the customer service, which is actually another word for talent engagement, rather, engaging your customer. So again, what are we going to do? So we are being called to adopt and use automation and technology, and then enhancing, I think the D word, digital. Everywhere you go, we talk about digital. But maybe in my opinion, digital doesn't have to be something that's complicating, something that is expensive. So we're probably going to learn more about this. What exactly digital is? This experience as a HR person. Okay. And then we were going to talk about all these best-in-class employee experiences. All right, next slide, please. Okay, now, so this webinar, as you can see, we will seek to address 4 questions. right? They are all visible on your on the screen. I'll just briefly go through. One is, how do you track and improve employee engagement? I think the key word here that all HR love to use is, how do you track? How do you track? Certainly, we are not encouraging people to just monitor them and track them, but tracking more for the purpose of effectiveness, right? That's one. Aligning the individual and team behavior. I think now that we don't get to see your, in fact, I think we probably won't be able to see our worker, our colleague. So behavior is one problem, because it will be translated into how do you do your, which is the third part, traditional appraiser. Okay, I think the appraiser is every one of us, we know that we have to do it, but how we're going to do it? And now we're going to have this management system, right? We hear a lot and lots and lots of management system. So again, let's hear from the panel speaker, and later on you can have some questions, you can ask them. And finally, we're going to look at how HR Tech is going to enable this listening culture. I think listening culture is definitely part of engagement. If you want to engage people, you need to listen to them. But we're not going to see them now. So how are you going to listen to them if you're not going to see them? So tech is going to come in. So communication via tech. I think that's probably the thing that we're going to touch on today. Next slide, please. So let me just briefly introduce to you the speaker that we have. So the first speaker we have is Mr. Gerald Leong. He's the HR Director, Asia Pacific of Wargaming. So for those of you who love to play gaming, you probably know what it is. Now, he's an international HR leader, all right? And he has actually had lots of experience over the various industries and companies, all right? And currently, he's actually looking at the Asia Pacific region, right? So before this, he was the HR VP at LinkedIn and BT. So he believed in making good work and everything. So after his presentation, well, question to him. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer, right? Next one, please. Our next speaker, my good friend, Nicole. Nicole is presently the head of talent for MatchMove. Now, Nicole is very passionate about HR, about people, and definitely technology is one of her biggest passion. So now she is with MatchMove, and it is in MatchMove, she plays a very key role, which is head of talent. As you can see, talent is a very nice word for getting people, and Nicole will be able to share with you how she is using technology to help her to reach out to find the right people. Okay, again, a very HR term, the right people for the company. Right, so her achievement is that she got a TFAP Exemplary Employer Award in 2018, among the other awards that she has. All right, thank you, Nicole. Next slide, please. The third speaker is Prithvi. I hope I got that right, Prithvi. Okay, he's currently the CBO of KPISoft Technology, and his accountability or his responsibility lies in the digital platform product line. Okay, and how it impacts the marketing initiative, right? So now he was previously also the CHRO and a senior corporate vice president, organization effectiveness at HCL Technologies. So while he has 30 plus years, I think the plus is probably close to 40, but as you can see, very experienced practitioner, so thank you for joining us. We'll hear more from him later. Next slide, please. And last but not least, we've got Tung, a very young CEO of Engage Rocket. He will bring with him a different level of analytics sophistication and the scientific rigor. Okay, it sounds really scientific to me at this point of time, but yeah, he will tell you more about it. He will show you more later on during the presentation. So before he became the entrepreneur, he was also the Southeast Asia regional director. Okay, so thank you for joining us. Later we'll hear more from him. Okay, next slide, please. Right. So before we start, we need to have a little feel of how you are. So there's some homework here that we need to some work for. So we're going to do a poll. All right, a poll. Later on, it will pop up on your screen. Right. So the question is that from an employee perspective, right, what are the top challenges when it comes to work from home? Is it social isolation, meaning that you don't get to see people? Distraction of home at home, meaning there's a lot of noise and everything. There's a gap from personal life and work life because you can't really differentiate. Or is it an infrastructure issue like no Wi-Fi and stuff like that? So go ahead, let us know. Yeah, what is your vote? You can start voting now. Are we seeing any votes coming in? Well, I think it's a good time to really look at it. Most of you are actually managing people. So I'm sure you hear a lot, work from home. In fact, a lot of people are saying that, no, I don't like to work from home. Why is it so? Yeah. Oh, okay, we've got the result. It seems like, wow, blurring gap between personal life and work life is actually top of 61%. That's more than half, which means that people, when you work from home, a lot of the employer thinks that I'm like working 24/7. Yeah, maybe that's something that we need to think about. Okay, right. So so without further ado, let me introduce Gerard. So Gerard will do his presentation now. Gerard, over to you.
Hey, Benny, thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, Gerald here again, HR Director for Wargaming.net. Just for a bit of context and scope, Wargaming is a global computer games company, and on screen you can see some of our most popular titles. We've got about 5,000 employees globally, 250 of them in Asia Pacific, and more than 100 million players enjoying our games for the past decade. So first things first, I want to thank you for having me here with you today to share more about how tech has helped Wargaming engage with our talent. Next slide, please. So I don't think we need any introductions to who or what this is. This is literally unprecedented uncertainty and chaos packaged neatly into a shell. I would say the biggest challenge our generation has ever faced. End of the day, this is a people crisis. And naturally, the biggest and most challenging question I get as HR, like many of you here, are from our leaders, managers, and employees. And that question being, HR, what should we do? HR, what's the guidance or policy on this? Or maybe sometimes even worse, HR, this is what you should do based on this article or this study or based on what some other company is doing. So those are challenging questions. And what I first did was myself and the global HR leadership team, we just really took a step back. And then we realized, hey, wait a minute, these are all the wrong questions, because HR just jumping into action would only lead to more chaos and confusion. So what's the first thing that we do? We work with the various leadership teams around the globe to first understand what is important to the business. And we primarily distilled it down to two things that was important to Wargaming. Number one, the well-being of our employees. And number two, the ongoing operations of our business. Very logical. Next slide, please. So here's what we did. Regarding the first priority, the well-being of our employees, instead of jumping into action, we proposed running a survey. Why? We wanted to let data speak for itself. So we launched this survey. In this instance, in Wargaming, we use a tool called Qualtrics. We already had it, but in reality, you can use any other survey tool. So what was different? What was different was that we carefully designed customized questions to collect crucial feedback, right, in a timely manner. And we were able to slice that data in order to tell a data-driven story that would help with decision-making at all levels. So just as an example, what did we manage to find? In Asia Pacific, we had about 90% participation rate across two surveys. And that meant that our insights would be statistically representative and that our employees actually believe that we would make a difference. In April, in the thick of things, when all our employees were working from home, the data showed us that only 15% of our employees saw a dip in productivity, while 30% actually saw an increase in productivity. Even us as HR, we were surprised. The data also showed that 90% felt supported by their managers, 90% had confidence in our leadership team, 90% felt that communications were very helpful. So what? So what this meant was that our recommendation as HR, looking at the data, was everyone, leaders, managers, continue what you are doing right now. Don't stop doing anything, but also don't try to over-index with more stuff. No need to arrange online parties or some games or anything. We are doing okay. And then we have a 5% minority of our employees that actually told us we were unhappy. So what did we do? Our HR partners then went to specific teams, because we could slice up their data, to facilitate an intervention with managers, rather than trying to be distracted and focusing on designing broad programs, right? Now, time passed, and in June, when things stabilized, the leadership then wanted to know.
IHRP, what's up?
Oh, what is that? So the leadership wanted to know if returning to work was a good idea. Again, we took the approach, but what does the data say? And interestingly, when we looked at both surveys, happiness actually increased from the first to second survey because our employees were getting used to the new groove of working at home. But here's the interesting thing. When we asked the employees, how would you feel about returning to work? Happiness dropped by a third. Sentiments of unhappiness grew from 7% up to 20%. And we were also able to slice the data to show that some countries were more happy to return, while some countries were neutral and some countries were polarized. Again, that's just data, so what? So we knew now that we needed to take a site-specific approach to any return to workplace strategy. And in Asia, our leadership team ended up with the decision of, you know what, let's keep it flexible for every employee, right? And rather than dictate a direction, you know. From the comments, we were also able to understand the reasons for unhappiness, right? And our leaders and managers were able to acknowledge them specifically and affirm our employees that, hey, you know what, we have no intentions of forcing anyone to return to work. We also asked questions about how would you like the office space to be set up to provide you maximum safety and assurance. So we got that data and we were able to set up every single one of our offices globally to ensure a safe environment for those who wish to return to the office. And again, with that data at a global level, it provided support for our global leadership to invest in a global EAP. And we're currently implementing that right now. So what's the bottom line here? With technology, we managed to focus on the right things to do rather than the things we assumed needed to be done. And at the same time, we built a whole lot of trust between our employees and the management teams all at the same time. So that was a pretty good experience. Next slide, please. So second business priority, right? Continue operational continuity. With that particular theme, we actually set up a global pandemic response team. And weekly, a group of 20 to 30 individuals would come together to provide updates and plan on how to respond to the evolving situation of the pandemic. At the same time, the global business partners in this group were asked by our global leaders to lead the pandemic response initiatives for each business group. And what did the global business partners have to do? They needed to consider a site-by-site operational, people, government compliance factors, changing rules, and synthesize all that and provide the leader or our leaders with an overview for decision making. This alone was a huge task. These meetings that I attended weekly were complex. Can you imagine having 20 to 30 people on a call, taking turns to give updates for 20 different site locations and trying to synthesize all that complexity into a coherent overview in real time? Impossible. So here's the tech, and what did we do? We introduced meaning HR, we introduced a project management tool, which we were actually using ourselves already in HR for some time, called Monday.com. And this cloud platform prides itself in real-time collaboration, providing automated notifications, chain summaries, and dashboard reporting. And we used it exactly for this purpose. And the nice thing is that everyone around the business rallied around this tool in an effort to help our company, Wargaming. And what's the result? What's the result is right now on a daily basis, this dashboard is currently keeping about 60 leaders and key stakeholders from various functions, finance, HR, workplace, administration, different business groups, all collaborated on one platform. Till date, we have about 4,000 updates on the dashboard since May, And imagine trying to get 4,000 updates verbally through a meeting. That's not possible, right? And all these updates are summarized by an automated dashboard in real time and really allow us to focus on discussing more important matters related to the pandemic response. Most importantly, our HR business partners were able to provide overviews to our business leaders for strategic decision making. So ROI, I don't know if you can put a price on that, but I really imagine the ROI on efficiency and productivity gain would be immense. And for our leaders who are also employees themselves, now they were able to make right decisions under these circumstances and focus on other things that really mattered. So priceless. Next slide, please. So here are my HR learning lessons, just to share very quickly. So in closing, the pandemic has really forced us to think on our feet and prioritize our time to focus on actions that critically matter. And it is truly the tech that has enabled us to do this with precision and agility, okay? And my first point being the best HR tech tool is the tool that's going to fit your business purpose. And this principle doesn't just apply during the pandemic, it applies outside of the pandemic. Don't implement a tool simply because it's cool or has many features. Make sure it is fit for purpose, okay? Now, second thing to think about, when being asked, our community as HR, when being asked to do something, step back and frame the situation first. What's the overarching purpose? What are we trying to achieve? Is there tech or data insights that we can help enable this decision making? And if you get some data insights, use it to facilitate, coach, consult, have a conversation, tell a story, okay? Third point here, and this comes from a more emotional place. We are not alone as a HR community, and we cannot do this alone. Collaborate and ask for help. Partner closely with your leadership. Remind them that we are in this together. There's no HR versus business. We're all part of the business. Collaborate with other departments, finance, workplace, admin, analytics. Thirdly, and this is quite close to home, if you're not yet IHRP certified, get certified. Why? Because you can leverage the IHRP network, right? There's a IHRP Connect app on your phone that you can ask questions and get questions answered. There are many online resources that the team has so painstakingly put together and very useful resources. We also have a WhatsApp group, very informal, very quick. We try to share tips, help each other with good information. So that's something that I would really encourage, for the HR folks here, join IHRP, And lastly, stay strong. All of you are heroes. And don't forget to take care of yourself first. So thank you very much. Next slide, that's my thank you slide. Benny, I'll hand that back over to you.
Thank you, Gerard. Thank you for that very encouraging note. I think that's really very important. I think we need to be flexible, but then the most important thing is that you have support, okay? So with that, thank you, Gerard, again for that. So let me just introduce you to bring me into the next presenter. So that would be Nicole. So Nicole, over to you, Nicole.
You might be on mute, Nicole.
Nicole, would you like to show yourself to your pretty face?
Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole, and I come from a Singapore-based fintech company called MatchMove. Next slide, please. First of all, I'd like to thank IHRP, Sriram, Benny, and my fellow speakers for making this session possible. A lot of work has been put behind to get this up. So back to MatchMove, we are on the set of the leading edge financial technology, providing products like Lightspeed and RemitSend. You are welcome to learn more about products and services on our website. Today with MatchMove, we have about 150 employees and are present in 7 countries. As head of talent, the use of HR tech is integral to our corporate growth and expansion. Next slide, please. So our challenge across the years have always been threefold. I think as with any maybe HR practitioners, it's attracting talent, engaging talent, and finally retaining them. I'm sure that this has been challenging for most of the practitioners. My my overarching vision for HR is to ensure that every employee engage with HR in a positive and constructive manner. Sometimes we receive feedback that HR can be tedious, boring, so much paperwork, and so we have to use technologies to help build our vision. So here are some of the technologies that we have implemented. The first one would be Google Site. We use it to, it's what we call the employee playbook. It's a central repository for all our HR information, a comprehensive collaborative tool for employee orientation, and an ongoing training and retraining platform. By the way, our HR team built this. So the next one will be Darwinbox. We implemented this year. It's our new HRMS for automated employee lifecycle engagement and management. Lastly, there's one more, it's Intellect. It's a step we took to show employees that we care as an employer. And Intellect provided a platform to engage with employees through psychological training and personal improvement. Next slide, please. One of the largest challenges we HR folks will face is to get business buy-in for any HR tech. So here I would like to share how I prepare my business case for HR tech adoption. 3 simple guides to present to the management: process, impact, and outcome. First, I always ask myself, what process am I trying to improve? Then I will prepare a proper forecast and breakdown of the impact of this application. And finally, and most importantly to the business-minded people and the CFO, I will show the positive outcome that is directly and indirectly linked to this. Let me go through the examples. Next slide, please. So when I first joined MatchMove, there was no good process for employee orientation. We did not even know where to get information for company policy, leave application, training, and irrelevant documentation, you name it. Next slide, please. So hence, the HR team built our own employee playbook using Google Site. It's free of charge, and this is the process that we went through process, impact, and outcome. So in the process, there was so much room to improve of communicating and onboarding employees, and we are a tech company, we are using some manual ways to do our tasks. So what would be the impact? Prior to implementation, so much time was spent by employees constantly and persistently asking HR questions like, where to apply leave? Where can I find this? Where is the XYZ document? What does MatchMove stand for? We typically spend about 30 to 60 minutes a day just manually directing people to the right forms, the right channels, the right people, and a lot of time is being wasted here. And the outcome is very easy to present. Being able to save 1 hour a day from each person meant savings of at least 4 man-hours for manual repetitive work. With near zero cost to implement and only HR time to learn and build the site, it was an immediate hit with management and employees. Next slide, please. And moving on to recently what we have launched in deciding on a HRMS is quite straightforward, but on a good fit at a reasonable price is always a challenge. And after going through with a number of vendors, we have decided to go with Darwinbox. Next slide, please. And so how do I apply PIO to getting Darwinbox? In the process, is trying to monitor, document, collect, and process data on an employee life cycle from recruit to retire usually takes 7 days for one employee. And almost everything pretty much manual. For example, we have to fill paper application form, print employee contract, sign, scan, file, and the processing data took the longest because we just have to gather the right information, formulate it, and prepare the report. And the impact, it was clear, easy to show how a singular system that's collected, compiled, reported, all this information will reduce man-hours wasted doing manual work. With the ability and the outcome, with the ability to pull our company organization chart in 1 minute, it was immediately clear to management how a unified system massively improved data collection, presentation, and for decision making for managers and for employees. It became so much easier to analyze and review employee performance and development across data points. Next slide, please. One of the latest HR innovation we have implemented, or HR Tech, that implemented was Intellect, specifically during the stressful time of COVID and during circuit breaker. Next slide, please. And how did I go about implementing this? Again, going through the process, impact and outcome. We identified many employees getting stressed, psychologically working from home, and the overall global situation. It has caused maybe some loss of productivity while people cope with the change. And what's the impact? This app provides an outlet for stress and mental support. We believe that this will build long-term mental resilience in our talent pool, and many of them will certainly become better leaders and contributors. The outcome, today we have an outlet for employees to de-stress, a discrete channel for them to provide emotional support with little chance to engage in human contact. And surprisingly, there's a lot of introverts in a technology company like me, and we used the app for emotional support. Next slide, please. To conclude, these are some of my personal experience that I wish to share. I hunted the largest problem in my company, and I always start with the process with the smaller step. With the first step, I will try as much concrete feedback from all stakeholders, and then I force myself to research on, go around about the solution, and because one size really doesn't fit all. The challenge is deriving the best bits of practices applicable to your unique situation. Once I have identified a set of solutions to recommend to the management, I will then factor in long-term planning. Getting a cheap solution for a stopgap fix can turn out to be an expensive lesson or mistakes in the future. Having successfully gotten management buy-in with process impact outcome, I will always be mindful that in today's technology-driven world, cutting-edge technology like MatchMove, change is just a new constant. So remember, I mentioned that my overarching vision for HR is to ensure that each employee engage with HR in a positive, constructive manner. This is my last and final point of how MatchMove uses technology in talent engagement, in applying IQ, EQ, and cultural intelligence to the 5 Ws: who, what, why, when, and why. We try our best to make every employee journey with MatchMove as automated, frictionless, and constructive as possible. The user experience and the employee experience is priority. This in turn allows us, the HR professionals, to do what we really want to do best, which is to spend time nurturing, mentoring, and building talent just for MatchMove, but also for the industry at large. To conclude, lastly, please stay well, stay strong, and join the HR community with IHRP, and you get a lot of support. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for the presentation. I think we actually have a little feel of how technology is going to help us. Probably the key word here, the main thing that we want to look at is I'm going to ask ourselves, are you managing people with technology, or are you using technology to manage people? Right? That may be something that we might want to think about it. Okay, now, thank you, Nicole. Now, before we go to the next speaker, we're going to have another poll again to have a feel. How you at this point of time feel about the whole thing. Now, can we have the poll question? Yeah, okay. Now, in the last 6 months, okay, has your HR team implemented any new tech to facilitate better employee collaboration and engagement? Very straightforward question. Yes, you have, or no, you have not. Right. Okay. So do let us know your answer, your response now. Okay, we should be getting the result pretty fast for this question. HR implemented technology, not necessarily very expensive, software or anything. Something that you have done to automate any of your process, whether it's onboarding or performance management. Yeah, I believe we've got the result. Boom! Wow! Oops. Okay, that's close to like 50-50, but a little sad to see that yes, it's 41%. But I hope that after today's webinar, you will go back and really look into using more technology, as you have heard from the panel speaker, how it has helped for you to reach out. I think again, as HR, we want to know how to reach them. That's it. All right. Okay. So that's a good response. We have that. So now that we have heard from Nicole and we have heard from Gerald, let's hear from Prithvi. Oh, oops, my screen is a bit. Oh, okay. So let's hear from Prithvi. So over to you.
Thank you, Benny. It's great to join this afternoon, and I appreciate everybody on a Friday evening taking time out to sharpen the saw and pick up new thoughts. I am for sure, and I'm looking forward to answer some of the questions that are coming in. I represent KPISoft. KPISoft is essentially a company that has built a digital platform which enables recommendations across performance, careers, learning, productivity, and helps individuals and teams deliver and exceed expectations through some of the tools that we offer. So as I go to the next slide, if we can shift to the next slide, I will talk to you a little bit about the ecosystem that many of you would possibly be having. I think it was interesting to see the response that on the poll that Benny just ran, that though many people have sort of looked at technology and accelerated digitization possibly over the last 6 months, I'm sure many of you already have most of the transaction systems in place. Our focus is really around performance learning, succession planning, career management, and we believe that the way to actually translate technology, and I think this point was made in some of the conversations, as to how do you actually translate the use of technology to drive action or to actually truly improve experience of people, rather than the other way around of just having a tool which possibly is not realizing the benefits. And we do this by embedding an analytics layer on top of our platform that answers some of the questions that I've headlined over here. So let me tell you a little bit about how that happens. So if we move to the next slide. Most, we look at performance beyond what the traditional performance management processes have been considered till today. And, performance management is possibly the most hated process by employees and leaders when they look at, does it really help me do better or not? Most surveys or most conversations that you have, this is a process that most people don't really leaders feel it takes too much time. Employees feel it doesn't really reflect truly what they do. So what we've sort of taken away from that is really that performance is really driven every day, and what we need to power is really the proficiencies and the line of sight as to what extraordinary performance can deliver for the individual and the team beyond just a performance ritual. Which is, let's do an annual appraisal, let's do a performance review, which turns into more of a process step rather than truly driving performance. If you look at most consumer apps today, you are basically using them every day to tell you, what is the best deal, what is the best direction to reach. Maybe if you're taking a Grab, let's take a shared taxi app. How do I go from here to my destination the fastest? Where is there traffic? Where do I have to pay extra toll? So it gives you recommendations on how to make your journey faster, better, more comfortable. Similarly, what we've done is we've added in a lot of personalized, prescriptive, and predictive nudges, which links to your KPIs and your strategy and performance. And we found that clients actually benefit from these insights and nudges to accomplish their missions as they sort of progress through the year, through the month, through the week. We also have built in certain ways to reward, recognize people. And the idea is not really to just talk about KPISoft, but I think any tool or platform that you use, I think in today's world can benefit from an analytical layer or from a behavior changing layer which actually uses behavioral economics and nudges you to take further actions. So if I move on to the next slide, I wanted to just dig a little bit deeper into the kinds of features that we have experienced with our platform, which have had the most impact for people as we look at enhancing performance. I think one of the conversations we had was around, in these difficult times where you have a distributed workforce, how do you ensure that three things really continue well? One is around communication, and I think a lot of companies have adopted to using Microsoft Teams or Zoom or other, Google Meet or any other tools to actually make sure that there's a video and ability to connect. I think the second area is around collaboration, and I think that's also, there are lots of tools which can enable that. I think what one needs really to think about is this communication and collaboration truly resulting in contributions? And what we are trying to suggest is that one needs to look at all these things in a single place and make it easy for the individual or the leader or a team to actually to be able to look at a common scorecard, drill down to an individual, look at who has been assigned the task, who is sharing a responsibility for a task, who owns an activity, personalized to them specifically, and then really use that information that is consolidated in a single place to push insights and push suggestions which lead to positive behavior. If that is happening, one needs to, of course, recognize it, applaud it, and reward it, and you need to have an ability to do that because people respond to that, and people respond to recognition. If you look at what talent engagement, I think the biggest challenge for us lies is really what I'm doing every day. Is somebody noticing it, and am I being called out for it? Doesn't have to be publicly, but at least I know that there is meaning in my work. And our effort is really to say that this platform, when introduced, whether in a distributed workforce or for a team in an office, that is what we try to really accomplish, is really look at how can you engage, enable, and empower people to deliver performance that is meaningful, both for the enterprise as well as for the employee himself or herself. If I go on to the next couple of slides and then I'll wrap up, I wanted to share two case studies as to, does this really pay off? And I'll talk a little bit about an implementation that Forrester, which is a consulting firm, and analysts studied of our platform in the Smart Dubai, which is the government organization in UAE, and try to look at how long does it really take to impact performance. I think I was listening to somebody speak the other day, and they were talking about the benefits realization issue, the adoption issue in a current environment where really people are looking for an ROI, given that everybody is in a little bit more of a cost containment mode. Becomes a very important conversation to have as you look at upgrading how to maintain performance, especially as teams continue to remain remote. I think people are going to look for real dollar values around, is productivity really gaining? Is it helping my leaders? Has there been any cost savings from legacy solutions? And how has my operational expenses truly come down? So you'll see some of the numbers here, and you can see the significant impact that the platform makes, starting as soon as from year one as compared to more traditional systems. Moving to the next example, is really the benefits realized at a conglomerate, which operates out of Indonesia, a company called Sinermas Mining, that some of you may have heard of. It's the country's second largest conglomerate there. And we introduced our platform there. They renamed it and called it Impact, which I think was very telling about what they were looking for. And if you look at some of the metrics that we measured, so along with introducing our platform at that time, the company also asked us to help them set up an enterprise performance management office or a team. It could be your HR team, it could be a finance team, it could be a combination, but they essentially wanted to ensure that introducing technology was not just done independently, but was actually going to deliver the business case and the benefits that we had talked about as important to them. And when you look across a couple of years later as to how we have progressed, I think all the numbers are extremely encouraging. I especially think the satisfaction of being able to coach in, to talk to somebody, connect with somebody, really is something that I think in these times is really necessary, aside from, of course, the more tangible numbers. So I'd encourage you all to sort of look at your performance management processes and see. I think what Nicole spoke about, the PIO approach, was excellent. I think apply that and see what sort of emerges as needs and things that we can help with. If you move to the last slide, if we can help in any way, feel free to connect with us, and we'd be happy to have a conversation. Benny, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Prithvi. That was very detailed and insightful. Before we go to the next, the next presenter, there's some questions that perhaps the panelists, well, if you have type in your question, do give some time. The panelists will try to answer them as soon as they get to read them. All right. In looking at the time, probably I need to introduce in the last speaker, Chee Tung. Chee Tung, are you there?
Hi, Benny. Hi, everyone.
Okay, over to you, Chee Tung.
Thanks very much, Benny. And I know you guys have just sat through quite a number of very interesting presentations. I'll try to continue that here. So at Engage Rocket, this is something that we study a lot. This is our bread and butter. We live and breathe this stuff. And today I'm going to be sharing a little bit about how we have seen companies create a best-in-class employee experience in order to improve employee engagement. So next slide, please. A quick introduction to Engage Rocket for those who may not know us. We are the fastest growing people analytics software company based here in Southeast Asia. We're a startup based in Singapore and have been growing very fast since we started about 4 years ago. We've been fortunate to have been featured in a number of different outlets in the press and have been privileged to work with more than 100,000 users across Asia Pacific and the world. So the first thing here that I'm going to be sharing with you is, I think we hear a lot about the new normal, and I think Gerald actually shared a little bit earlier about how there was this inertia towards working from home once we started the circuit breaker. And this was a study that we did together with IHRP and SHRI, where we interviewed more than 20,000 employees across 127 companies, across all the different sectors in Singapore. You can actually download the full white paper with this QR code. So we're giving away freebies today. And what we found that was very interesting, actually, from early on. So this study was actually the study that has the largest consistent database of workplace sentiment in Singapore through the sensitive months of COVID-19, April, May, when we were still in circuit breaker, and beyond. So even June and July, once we started entering phase 1 and phase 2. And we were tracking data on a weekly basis across all of these different companies. And what was very interesting to us when we first started was this, and it got picked up by the Straits Times actually, where we found that, interestingly, even though so many people were complaining about working from home in the early days of the circuit breaker, we found that more than 8 out of 10 of the respondents were saying that they wanted to work from home more than half of the time. So this is quite shocking to us. This, if we think about it, more than half of the time, that's 2 to 3 days a week working from home, or 2 weeks in a month. So to what extent are companies today prepared to allow for that in the long term? Because this was something that this is the question actually. If you look at the question below the chart, it's based on my experience working through the circuit breaker and beyond. I can see myself working from home permanently. Half the time, a quarter of the time, 3/4 of the time, or 100% of the time. So you'll see that actually only less than 10% of people said that they do not want to work from home. And even only 1/4 of the time, that's still more than 1 day a week or 1 week in a month. So it's still a considerable preference to work from home. And this speaks to the adaptation that we were going through as a workforce. So how do we even want to unwind this? Is one of the key questions about the employee experience that needs to be answered. Next slide, please. So the first point that I would make, that I think I'd like everyone to take away, and I'll recap all of this later on. The first point is that by deploying people analytics and deploying technology to run this analytics for you, you're actually then able to make what is very intangible in the HR space suddenly tangible. And with that information at your fingertips, you're then able to make more informed decisions. You're then able to direct very limited resources in the right areas and the right priorities. So I like what Gerald said earlier, like after you've done all the analysis, then so what, right? And one of the pieces of analysis that we did with the study that we did with IHRP was this particular chart, where we actually used Employee Net Promoter Score as a proxy for employee engagement. So for those of you who are not familiar, what ENPS is, it's a single question. How likely are you to recommend your company as a place to work? And it was developed by the global management consulting company, Bain & Co. And it's on a 0 to 10 point scale. And it divides your employee population into 3. So you have your promoters who are highly engaged, your passives who are, they show up 9 to 6 every day, but they don't necessarily go the extra mile, and your detractors who are quite unhappy about where they are working. So when we did this analysis, we ran a multiple regression on Employee Net Promoter Score with all the different engagement question drivers that we asked. And what we found was really interesting. In a crisis like now, the most important driver of employee engagement is the demonstration of care by the organization at all levels of the company. The second highest, if you look on the x-axis or the horizontal scale, we track the impact on Net Promoter Score, meaning to what extent does a change in one of these questions change your employee engagement. So the higher, the more sensitive your employee engagement is to that particular factor. So the second highest factor that we found was organizational support in terms of the effectiveness of communication that was delivered at all levels. And finally, very interestingly, was the managers. So managers at the team level, they had the second highest impact behind the organization. And the ability to give clear and regular feedback while working remotely was a major factor in terms of whether people felt engaged or not. So this was interesting because it was not just about the care and concern that needed to be communicated, which was very important. The next thing that needed to be communicated was, I want to know that I'm productive. I want to know that what I am doing is linked to what the organization needs. So that's where the manager's feedback comes in. So what we found was that there were actually a few different good examples of this. When at the organizational level, we work with a large local telecommunications company. And one of the things that they immediately did and responded to the analytics that they did was they found that a lot of people were having trouble with how ergonomic their work from home chair was. So they actually made it possible for people who wanted to bring home their office chairs to do so. So they could take their chairs home from the office that were very ergonomic, and they could bring it home and use it at home. They were then also able to, they also ran regular pulse surveys to address pain points and to, more importantly, to be able to see the progress of those pain points over time. And they fed these results back into their bi-weekly town halls. Another example was a global brewery. So they make beer here in Singapore. I guess there's only one. And immediately they started holding happy hours on Zoom. And they made it a point that people would obviously bring alcohol and so on to these happy hours. And they were then, managers and teams at all levels were then able to share these with them. Finally, another very interesting example was by a global marketing automation software company, where to deliver this manager support, they actually structured one-on-ones. So these manager one-on-ones, and they structured them around a few different themes. So there was a well-being one-on-one where once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks, managers were encouraged to meet their staff on a one-to-one basis to talk about their mental health and mental well-being. There were also performance one-on-ones to be able to increase the frequency at which people got feedback about their performance. And finally, there was still career one-on-ones. So even though there was so much uncertainty, they found that managers wanted to pay more attention to people's careers. Next slide, please. So with all of these emerging themes and demands that we find in the workplace because of the pandemic, how do we make sense of this, and how do we go about prioritizing? And most importantly, since we are a people analytics company, what are the aspects that we can apply in our companies to do so? So next slide, please. So these are just some areas, being able to run engagement pulse surveys, for those of you who have the fortune of hiring new people, to be able to run remote and on-site onboarding feedback, to be able to monitor your manager best practice. So another good example is another company that actually tracked their manager one-on-one data and found that the frequency of these one-on-ones correlated very strongly with the engagement. We also want to make sure that we're digitally ready. And then finally, to be able to equip our teams and our team managers with the right skills and set them up for success. Next slide, please. So the second point that we've covered so far is to be able to link all of this analytics closely to business objectives, ideally, and to be flexible with them when the time changes. And a very good example of that is actually this case study from EasyLink, when they actually started out with a belief, core values, so business-driven, empowerment, learning, innovation, energetic, and fast-moving, as they transition from I guess a traditional technology company to a fast-moving tech company. And they were deploying pulse surveys and working with Engage Rocket to drive that culture change. And then when COVID-19 hit, they were then able to very flexibly and in an agile manner change the ways that they were tracking their staff and started to they started looking at their employee well-being and their productivity while going through COVID-19 in order to help them. And they found that the participation rates went up, and actually the engagement rates actually even went up during a crisis by 10%. So the third and final conclusion here is to be able to iterate quickly. So don't hope for a big project, just run small experiments and keep moving fast. And look for continuous improvements as an agile process. So the 3 points, again, number one, look for analytics to make your intangible aspects of HR tangible. Number two, be able to link your programs clearly to business objectives and be flexible with them. And number three, iterate quickly and look for continuous improvement as an agile process as opposed to a particular objective that you need to hit. Again, you can download this case study with this QR code over here. So thank you very much for your attention so far, and back to you, Benny.
Thank you, Chee Tong. Can I have the panelists to show your face? We have come to the end of the presentation part, and now it's very important that the engagement. We are talking about engagement, right? So it's a Q&A. But before we start, we are taking. I think there's quite a few questions, so we will try our best to go through the questions that are relevant to technology. I think for a start, we are definitely looking at analytics. Technology can help us to analyze with data, and therefore it gives us a chance to quantify, your argument to your management. Now, let me just go through some of the questions and try to answer them. Okay, we've got half an hour, if I'm not wrong. So we'll try our best. Now, there's a question that I see here, which is very interesting. What are some of the challenges you face when integrating new HR technology with existing HR system in your company? I suppose most companies already have that system. So maybe the panel could answer this. Perhaps Nicole, you can start off because you were sharing with us a lot of how you use technology into your various HR activities.
Okay, sure. Some of the challenges, I guess, is really, first it's getting people ready for this tech. I think it's really about change management, create the right awareness, let them know what are the benefits of adopting new HR techs. Why are we moving forward with newer tech instead of the old ones? Definitely it's because of either more efficiency, more productivity, or maybe even price.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's one of the key things with a lot of. Now, what about Gerard? You talk a lot about wellness. I think you are very trying to touch your employee engagement. So how would you look into this question here?
Yeah, and I think even outside of engagement, so at Wargaming we use actually multiple systems, and we launch multiple systems as well. So an example is that we're using SuccessFactors, right? And that was our starting HRMS system. But interestingly, we do advocate the approach of what does the business need. So SuccessFactors has a performance management module. It has a recruitment module. But I think what we did as a HR organization is really understand how does Wargaming want to recruit. So instead of using SuccessFactors inbuilt recruitment module, we use Greenhouse. Why? Because we believe that is the one that would fit our business needs. Very recently, with the performance management module in SuccessFactors, we shut that down. Why? Because it didn't fit our business needs. And what do we do instead? We're also in the continuous performance management philosophy. We got one of our engineers to design a software that fit exactly how we wanted to operate, that we could take real-time notes, that, and these notes would be automatically transmitted to the employee, to different HR, and it's sort of like fully customized and bespoke to exactly what we wanted to do. Now, the challenge with any HR technology, as Nicole pointed out, would be do people actually want to use it, right? And so sometimes I think it's a flip question. It's not about how do we make people use the technology. If people are not using the technology, don't force them. Find something that works. Alternatively, if it's already a piece of technology that's in the philosophy that you want to operate, don't try to start too big, right? Work with advocates. Based on the data, you'll be able to see who are the highly engaged folks, right? Use them, showcase them, tell a story about how it's useful. Because the truth of the fact is, if your piece of technology is effective, you should see as well in the data an uptick in whatever it might be, business results, engagement scores, and so it's a self-feeding thing, right? And so the better it gets, it will feed back into the system, and we continue to tweak and grow the system, and more people will use it. So you really need to be patient and build it into the culture that we want to see. And all these systems, HR systems, remember, we're all part of the business. This is not a HR system that HR wants you to use, you know. So generally in the day-to-day operating of my team, we work alongside with our leadership teams and our managers. They are the ones sharing about the systems. They are the ones sharing about how they want to run performance management in the teams. They are the ones sharing why engagement is important.
Right.
It's not an HR thing.
Well, yeah, I think that's really the key word, you know, the human before resource, and then it brings us back to, you know, how are you using technology to manage rather than just using the technology, and then, you know, I think there's a lot of human touch here that I'm hearing from the panel. Now there's one question here. Oh, I just missed it. Somebody must have returned. Okay, now there's a question here. It says that success depends on both ecosystem. Oh, it just jumped off again. I'm so sorry. Okay, success depends on both ecosystem and mindset. We're talking about mindset here. So can you please share specific mindset challenge at all levels? Probably, I think this, Tung, you can answer because you're talking a lot about manager and people. So I think it's probably something that you could answer this, yeah?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question from Grace. I think when we think about mindset, right, there are a few different stakeholders that we typically encounter, and this is also from HR's point of view, right? So obviously there's HR. So as HR or people operations, you have a particular need to support the business. Then there's management, right? So there's the people who manage other people managers. So they are the ones that are going to implement the kind of systems that Nicole and Gerald were talking about. And then finally, there's individual contributors who need to figure out, like, okay, all these different things that I need to do. I have my own targets to achieve. How am I going to, I don't have so much time to go and figure out, like, well, all this data, all this whatever. So what we found to be true across all the successful implementation campaigns that we've seen is the ability to be able to map out for each of these different stakeholders, what does success mean to them? So what's in it for them to be able to deploy a tool like this? So for example, if we take a traditional performance management tool like, I don't know, I mean, you can name any of the enterprise software ones, right? And a lot of times there's a lot of pain around implementing it because the implementation is great for HR. So from HR perspective, to be able to see all the results at one shot, be able to calibrate, all that is fantastic. But for the users, it's actually terrible. For the team managers, it's very difficult to actually remember what your team did. And then for the individual contributors who want to shine, it's very difficult for them to therefore highlight to their managers, like, hey, I did all this, you know. And same things with typical engagement surveys, where you do once a year, twice a year. Great data for HR, but then the people on the ground never get to see it. So being able to couple the implementation of technology with a communication plan. Every new business process that's introduced needs to come with a change management plan. I mean, even though sometimes it can sound like a very daunting thing, a change management plan can be something as simple as implementing, you know, like one-on-one templates for managers. Like this is a playbook for you as a team manager, and you don't have to boil the ocean and hit everybody, right? Maybe you start with just people who first become a new manager. This is what you can do with your team. These are some of the kind of questions they can ask your team, and record down the notes in this particular system here, or whatever it is, right? So starting small, and then building up success. So once people start seeing success, they start seeing what's in it for them, they start driving the process. Managers start driving the process. So I'll give you a very simple example again. In employee surveys, there's always these open-ended questions, right? And you ask, okay, if you could change one thing, what would it be? Wow, people give you all kinds of responses. And then HR, you're overwhelmed, right? Oh my gosh, how are we going to deal with this? And then you're like, okay, let me go and run some focus groups. So you run another 2-3 focus groups with your teams. And then maybe 3 months later, you're like, okay, I kind of think that this is the issue, right? So one thing that we decided to do was, hey, you know, why don't we just let people respond directly to their team lah, right? But anonymously. So anonymously chat back and find out like, hey, what do you mean by work-life balance is a problem? And then you get a reply, oh, my daughter ends her childcare every day at 6:30 p.m. I'm forced to stay at work until 6 every day. I need to rush back every day. It's very difficult. Why can't I just start work earlier and end work earlier? And then you're like, hey, okay, problem solved. Don't need to go and do all this focus group, all these other things. Just hit the nail on the head. And once managers start doing this and getting a sense that, hey, actually, I don't need to go through all of this pain. I can just use this system and get my problem solved. Then they'll keep coming back. And then the mindset is built and then the ecosystem is built. I hope that answers the question.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, that's really interesting. You're sharing your experience, and definitely you hear about mindset and everything, which leads me to look at this the next question, which I think is very interesting. After we talk about mindset and managing people, it says that how do we leverage EQ across the organization? I'd be interested to hear from Prithvi, because you've got like 30 over years of experience. I'm sure you've seen a lot of employer, during your long career. How would you answer this? How would you advise about leveraging EQ across the organization? You need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
So first of all, you're making me feel very old, Benny. Which is not a good thing. I think I'm learning more every day now than I was many years ago. So I think it's the sign of the times. But I think you make an interesting point. I think there has been given pressures of work, what we have found is that most managers and leaders tend to become much more task-oriented. And they come out of a meeting or they come out of a conversation, find their team, and quickly divide up, you do this, you do that, get this to me by Friday, get this to me by next week. It becomes a very work-focused, task-focused conversation. One of the habits that we encourage people to ask and have the courage to sort of make sure the conversation shifts to ensure that there is more sensitivity in the dialogue is really around understanding context and understanding why and understanding what is the purpose of this activity. And I think if you can actually create a safe environment or create a habit or create a norm in meetings or in conversations where people do that, you'll see automatically people practicing much more of their EQ skills and their ability to sort of be more sensitive to the individual that they're interacting with than other. The two things are important, I think, in this. One is safety, and one is courage. Safety being provided by the managers and courage being provided, in a place where people are recognized for when they ask hard questions to get that context that is needed. Because unless that happens, training people on EQ or, encouraging people to have that orientation, I think can remain a bit of an academic expectation. So I don't think it's an easy answer. It's a good question. I think it's an action or steps that have to be done every day. I think that's how organizations which value a culture like that will take those steps, all the time.
Right. Thank you. Now, I see one question here, which I think is directed to Chee, Tung and Prithvi. I think it's very interesting. Now, the question is, can I check for smaller company size? Okay, how do we leverage on tools that are meant for larger size companies where they have the resources and budget? Is there budget-friendly option that you can share? Thank you. Well, going back to the costing. So probably Chee, Tung or Prithvi, you can answer this.
Maybe I can take a stab at this.
Right.
Maybe the first thing that I would say is that tools meant for larger companies generally are not tools that smaller companies will want to use. They will have a lot of configuration and customization options, and because of that, they then become very difficult to use, and almost impossible to use in some cases without like a big IT team to support, and a lot of other teams to support. So what what we have found, I mean, obviously, Engage Rocket is a software as a service, but we have found that many software as a service companies, where you can buy subscriptions, there's no installations or on-premise things that you need to do. You can work on your browser, on your mobile phone, and so on. So it's very lightweight, easy to deploy. These are options that are more friendly for smaller companies, and also likewise, because the commitments are lower, you then actually don't have to go and write paper, submit budget kind of thing. Actually, you just take out credit card and use, and pay for it and then claim later on. So that kind of there are many of these options in the market, and we do believe that is going to be the future of HR technology, because it's optimized for the user, so to make it as easy as possible to use.
Just to add to that, Benny, I think Gerald or somebody talked about being fit for purpose. I think one of the important parts when you're buying HR technology is to start with answering that question as to what features are you looking for. I think most technologies today, and I know that we are seeing that with most of the tools that KPISoft provides, is that they are modular in nature. They can be priced by module, and you should buy only what you really need. I think the important thing to remember is about big and small is not about is not about that you want something only designed for a small company, because every small company at some point wants to be a big company. But there has to be a journey, and that journey has to match your budgets, to be able to buy in small chunks, so that when you need more features or you need more additional functionalities, you are with a partner who can actually deliver that to you. One of the things we've struggled with is that if you don't have that the ability to grow with your client based on what he needs, the client's costs actually go up, because the cost of changing platforms at a time when he is at a different scale or needs different things because the purpose changes, makes you irrelevant or makes the client have a very difficult time. So that's spending adequate time in the beginning to decide fit for purpose, decide what you need when, and what is the journey of budget that you're going to take, and that help making sure that influences your choice of partner, I think helps you ensure that you choose the right tool regardless of where you are in terms of scale.
Right.
As well.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much. I think it definitely has to do whether it's costly or not. I think all of us need to look at what our needs are, be creative and be flexible, And that's good. That's good. Well, I think we have one more, we have time for one more question. So I think this question that I read is really interesting. It's really a mix of both technology and managing mindset. And, the question, how do you handle bosses who call employee back to office for meeting, when this can easily done virtually, not absolutely necessarily face-to-face. I think with COVID now, we've got a lot of all these challenges. I don't want to come back, talk to me over. So how should we do it? I think probably Nicole, you can start to answer this, because it seems to have a lot of, staff engagement program there.
Yeah, I know it's challenges, especially some bosses can be only like face-to-face interaction and whatnot. But again, it has to be, I think for me, it's more on looking at two folds. One is what is the government advisory and whatnot, and to really educate the bosses that, this is something that it's recommended, we should follow and whatnot. There's a whistleblower contact number that, you might get into trouble. You don't want to go into the wrong kind of attention. And on the other hand, I believe it's really more about, education. It's possible and it's doable, and already, in the COVID world, it's already showing that's how, work can be done and still be done during this period where people are, stuck at home. And it's not just in Singapore, right? It's a global level, and that's how we've been interacting with with our colleagues, our family members, all across the world. So I believe it's more about really how to manage the bosses in a way that, you know, work still get done, the productivity is still there. We can track with either tools or you know, or you know, really applying some HR tools, HR tech tools to check on people performance or whatnot. I guess it's really just about knowing how to manage or handle boss expectation. I think Gerald wanted to say something.
Yeah, I actually do. And I feel for this topic very strongly. And not just this question, I think you'll see quite a number of questions around, hey, this is what the business wants to do. We know that this is the best for the people. How do we convince managers to do this? And so I want to share something and take it in the right context. And here's the example I usually use. When the business is not earning enough money and in a loss, do you go to finance and ask finance, earn me more money? That sounds totally off, right? Doesn't it? Right? So when people are unhappy, right? Why do you run to HR and say, HR, my people are unhappy, make them happy? Okay. And so the paradigm shift I really want to bring here is for myself as an HR leader, I need to lead by example. I need to make sure my teams are happy. And then when I have a leader come to me or a manager come to me and say, HR, my team's unhappy, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to say absolutely nothing. I'm glad you know your people are unhappy. What are you going to do about it, right? Are you even interested in your people being happy? Do you want to work together with me to find out some strategies or things that we can do? Or are you even unsure where your team's current sentiments are? Sure, we have some tech and we have some tools that can help you understand that a little bit better. So to really answer the question is, what am I going to do with a manager who wants to force the team back? What I'll do is I'll provide the recommendation on why that's a bad idea, because it could make your staff unhappy. You know, I'm not going to send out an email for you to ask your staff to come back. You know, you finally, you are the manager, you make the call, you're the decision maker. You've been hired to make the decisions for your people. I've been hired to make the decisions for my people. You've been hired to make the decisions for your people. Now you bring them back, you force them back, they may become unhappy, and you know, that's on you. That's on you. So please consider the need. Please consider asking them and creating psychological safety and truly listening if you are causing them any discomfort, right? Because if they do leave, end of the day, if they're a great employee, it is a lose-lose situation for the company, for yourself, and for the individual's career, right? So, and I think that paradigm shift is really important. So for the HR community, I mean, we are people who love people, right? And I think we many a times fall into this trap of, yeah, we can see the solve. We must be the ones to solve this. We must be the ones to do it for them. No, have a discussion with your leadership. Have a discussion with your managers. You know, whose responsibility really is it to engage the teams? You know, I'll keep mine engaged and I'll show you the results for it. You know, and do you want to engage yours, right? Your business, your slice of the pie. So that's why I wanted to say. Please don't take it the wrong way. Please don't go challenge your business and say, you are responsible. Not like that, right? I think we've got to go in as trusted partner. For HR, the business will only start to listen to you if they truly believe that you care about the business, you know. And I think sometimes we fall into this trap of, we got to do what's best for the people. Look, the people, HR, finance, the leaders, we're all part of the same business, you know. So truly start to understand what's fit for purpose and what challenges you want to help your business overcome. So I'm done with my spiel.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again. Thank you all the speaker, the panel here, you know, for sharing with us your experience and some of the solution. I'm sure that I think there are more questions coming up, which unfortunately we do not have the time. I don't think so, but I'm sure IHRP will look into this and we could try to answer them along the way. Am I answering on behalf of IHRP at this point? But okay, I think our time is almost up. Once again, thank you very much. But before we go, I think I'll hand this back to Serum. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Benny, and thank you to all our speakers. What a way to end a Friday evening. Great insights, great perspectives. Thank you all for staying back. You're seeing a QR code on the screen. Please do share us your feedback so that we can keep fine-tuning. that's the focus of HR, right? We need to keep fine-tuning, improvise on the way. And we hope to have a great session on 25th September. Look forward to catching up with all of you. And yeah, Benny, we will definitely share a consolidated list of all the questions, and including even those which are not answered.
Right. Okay.
Thank you again, and see you on 25th September.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.
Right.
Thank you, everybody. Wonderful.